All right, try to make it short. I know everybody's ready for break. I'm going to talk about a State Highway 349 project. It was the first Super 2 design in the Odessa district. I was lucky enough to be on the design team, so I'll just go ahead and jump into that. The project was about 19.7 miles. About 17 miles of it was Super 2s. We were able to fit in 4 passing lanes in each direction within the limits of the project. It ended at the Upton County line. We are currently extending the Super 2 highway into Upton County. This is just a standard. I think Dr. Fitzpatrick showed one earlier. We ended up using the alternating passing lanes. One thing that we have done in later projects, not on this project, was add the dotted lines there. Since this is a standard, those were added on the pavement marking sheets, so they were sealed. Since they're included here, but not on the alternating ones. They seem to be working well in that corridor as well. One thing about using this alternating option was to give us a consistent roadway width. It was a little bit easier to construct. We were able to do 8-foot wide shoulders. Technically, it can accommodate, I guess, 4 lanes in the future, but depending on what the 4R design guidelines are there, it could change. Just kind of the process designing was, the first thing that we did was go in there and look at the chapter, read the entire section. It's just going to make it a lot easier when you actually go out there and drive the roadway and try to identify the areas where you're trying to, choose where your closing tapers, your opening tapers, and things like that are going to be. There's a lot of areas where you don't want a closing taper. As we found out, you have an intersection, you have a busy commercial driveway. This corridor has probably 50% truck traffic, heavy oil field traffic. So we found out pretty quick there's some areas where we did not want a closing taper to be constructed. We designed everything pretty close to 2 miles. I think we had maybe one section that wasn't exactly 2 miles. We varied from 1/10 of a mile to almost 1/4 of a mile, and it's not really noticeable when you drive the roadway. The driver expectation is pretty clear throughout the entire corridor. I mean, you pretty much know when the next passing lane's coming up, and it seems to help with the flow of traffic quite a bit. This was the typical section we used. We started off with about 40 foot of roadway. We reworked the existing material, then beefed up the roadway. It actually ended up being 10 inches of base. We ended up doing a change order later. And then we did have a 3-course seal on this one. That was a challenge to construct on this type of corridor just because of the heavy truck traffic. I do recommend a proper hot mix or maybe a thin overlay mix or something like that for these types of corridors. Typically, they're heavy truck corridors in our district, so we have incorporated those changes on other corridors. We did on this constructing it, which I was also involved in the construction process. We used subgrade widening. We didn't have a survey, a digital terrain model or anything like that. It was a quick and dirty energy sector funding. Get the plans out. Design as best you can, get the plans out and construct it. And we were able to do that. With some success. We had some challenges, but the overall product did come out as intended. We did, like I mentioned earlier, we did beef up the roadway with more flex space. We used a 3-course seal, which we got it to work, but there was a lot of patching. That's why I have this photo here. We built it under a pilot car. There was a lot of queuing, long queues of several different types of trucks. Mixed traffic, it was a challenge to construct. Another thing is you want to coordinate with your permit office. You don't want them to permit a busy driveway where your closing taper is going to be, where you're alternating from 2-lane to 1 lane when you're closing. That just adds another conflict that you don't want in that area. We had 1 or 2 that I think were constructed during construction, and we were able to adjust our striping to avoid that, which is easy if you can seal coat and cover that up and adjust your length a little bit. Also, if there's a county entity or city entity that wants to tie into that roadway, make sure that it's not in an area where you have a closing taper as well. The roadway design manual does mentioned no passing lanes through intersections. We added right turn ASO and DSO lanes at a lot of the T intersections that we had here. I think we had 4 or 5 major county roads that we added this at. We didn't have the right of way to maintain passing lanes and ASO and DSO lanes through here, but it worked out. It seems like the way the county roads were spaced out, it helped us with our spacing of our passing lanes, and it just makes the operation of the intersections that much better. Okay, this was kind of what we learned, not having the survey. You know, if you have the survey, use your excavation and embankment, you know, P&P sheets, you know, a full proper set of plans. Subgrade widening seems like it worked for most of the project, but there were some areas where we wish we had excavation and embankment quantities where it did cause us a couple of change orders, but luckily it wasn't enough to blow the budget of the project. As I mentioned earlier, you want to use, we're transitioning over more to the thin overlay mixes to kind of substitute for our 3-core seals that we use traditionally. It just seems like it's going to work a lot better. We have on State Highway 176, we've incorporated that, and it seems like it's going to hold up a lot better and it's easier for construction. Another thing is fix drainage while you're there. Usually you are going to widen the roadway, so make sure your structures are adequate. We had a couple areas where we had to end up adding some equalizers, but everything worked out there as well. This is the other project I mentioned on State Highway 176. We did pretty much the same design. A consultant came in and designed this one. They used the set of plans that I constructed as a go-by. One thing I wanted to point out is you do have to tie in eventually to another roadway that might not be a Super 2. It could be something else, so just keep in mind how you want to tie that in, you know, how you want it, you know, if you're going to extend that in the future to a Super 2, keep that in mind. That's just an extra from that set of plans. We have 3 different CSJs going on this project. We've constructed this one. We're constructing the next one, which is 48, and then there'll be a third one, which is 49. All of these projects have seemed to help the traffic tenfold. I mean, I would remember you would go through one of these corridors, it would take you twice as long to get through it. It really does help with the flow of traffic. This is the dotted lines I was talking about that we added on the pavement marking details. These seem to help out, you know, just letting people know that there's something going on there, that it's opening up. These are shown on the opening tapers, but I think we had some on the closing tapers as well. The buffer's another thing to consider. The roadway design manual kind of gives you a minimum. We use different ones on different projects for different reasons, but it does give you a good buffer for safety to avoid head-on collisions at those closing taper locations. Yeah, any questions? I don't know how much time I have left, a couple minutes. Anybody? I think I can see. Okay, I'll turn it over to Max. Thank you very much.